This is Larry the Bearded Wonder with World 11, and you're tuned to the World 11 Podcast Network. Press start to engage your mind.
Hello, everybody. This is your girl Zoe, and welcome to Mind Over Media Podcast, a podcast powered by World 11 Network. Here's a note for all listeners. I am not a licensed psychologist, and all views from the show are from my point of view or from the point of view of my guests. Please take this into consideration while listening. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Mind Over Media Podcast. I'm your girl Zoe, and today's first episode is about what this podcast is about and who I am as a podcaster. So sit down, relax, strap in, and let's blow our minds. As I said earlier, I'm Zoe. Now you might be thinking, who is this Zoe person, and what is this podcast? Mind Over Media is a podcast that aims to showcase games, TV, and movies that cover mental health topics. Now, this could be a form of media that has mental health conditions as its main focus, or one that tackles an issue subtly, but very well. Some, I would even dare say, are great resources. Lately, I found mental health discussions show up in the most interesting of places, and many times I didn't notice it until I dug a little further. Now, why does all of that interest me? As I stated, I am not a licensed professional, but one day I hope to be. I'm simply a person who has lived with mental health struggles my entire life. As the show progresses, I will be sharing those with you. It was during the pandemic that I really started to take a look at my own mental health. With all of that free time, what else was I going to do? It helped me learn a lot about myself that I didn't even know before, even though I'd been in therapy for 4 years. Also, during the pandemic, I consumed a lot of media, and I mean a lot of media. It was this combination that I realized so many pieces of media now include talk about mental health. This is great for helping end the stigma about mental health and neurodivergency. Ultimately, that is the goal I hope to have with this podcast. I want to show people mental health conditions aren't something to be scared of, but understood. I also want to give those who live with mental health conditions a place where they can feel seen, safe, heard, and comforted, as well as gather some resources. I hope you will enjoy listening and sharing in these discussions with me. Until next time, I'm Zoe. This was Mind Over Media Podcast, and remember, protect your peace. You can find Mind Over Media Podcast in the World 11 podcast feed at world11.podbean.com. All spelled out, all one word. World 11 Podcast Network can also be found on all major podcatchers, such as Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Good Pods. You can find the Mind Over Media podcast on Twitter at MindMediaPDcast and the entire World 11 network at World1_1 podcast.